All right. Hey guys, what's going on? We're all set to go. It's Lando from the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host today. I'm here chilling in quarantine. I'm in quarantine. We're here kicking it. It's the playoffs. We got a Tuesday night football game here coming in. I'm excited. You can ask me anything today, whether it's start sits, waivers, ads, guys to stream for your playoffs, pretty much anything. If you're looking to add some handcuffs, maybe add multiple defenses, get in your questions right now. I've got producer Scott in my ear, and we are ready to rock. And should be fun. We got Derek in the chat. What's going on, Derek? Thanks for coming by. And producer Scott, if you could just put the volume a little bit lower, because I can hear a bit of an echo. And yeah, guys, so I will go over a little bit of news and notes for the week. The Cardinals activated Larry Fitzgerald off the COVID IR list. It looks like AJ Bouye is facing a PED suspension. James Conner plans to play Week 14, which is good news for the Steelers. We weren't sure how he would kind of react from getting COVID after, formerly having cancer. So it looks like he's ready to rock. You could drop any Benny Snell shares you have if you were relying on him. The big news of the week is about Jalen Hurts. If you have him, and we'll talk about whether you can trust him. We'll look at his schedule and that going forward. So he will be the starter in Philadelphia, which is going to be an interesting turn of events. It seems like we've had a lot of rookies do really well this year, like Justin Herbert. Obviously, Joe Burrow when he was starting did great, and Tua Tagovailoa is doing really well as a starter. He's not having to throw a ton, but he's winning football games. So in the little bit of time we saw Jalen Hurts, he looked great. There's a connection with their rookie Jalen Reagor as well. So it should be fun to see the connection there. Maybe he throws to Zach Ertz, maybe Dallas Goedert. Going forward, I'm not going to have a ton of confidence starting really any Philadelphia Eagles. We've seen Miles Sanders be a major disappointment lately as well. There's a chance you might have to start him if you're in the playoffs, but there might be better options going forward. AJ Green, interesting note, that won't be back in 2021. So he's not going to be, he won't be playing football this year, which is weird to say. Won't be back in 2021, like at all next year, like when the season kicks off. Again, I'm not really sure what that report really means. I just assume that AJ Green isn't coming back with the Bengals this year, and you cannot rely on him. We had some great Monday Night Football. We had two games last night. The Washington football team took care of business. That was great news. And the other game, the Buffalo Bills beat the Niners as well. So one big thing is as well that Gruden is not confident Jacobs will return for Week 14. So if you're like my producer Scott and rely on Josh Jacobs, you need to roll out with Devontae Booker again, which is not really showed that it wasn't as good for fantasy as we all projected it to be in that plus matchup. It wasn't great, so it's going to be an interesting scene there. We got Kelly, we got my mom in the house on the Instagram chat or the YouTube chat. I'm just having some wine. I'm hanging out, enjoying some quarantine. We had a beautiful spaghetti dinner tonight from Kelly, so we're looking good. Scotty, do you have any interesting start sits you need help on in the chat? Because I know he's dealing with some issues. I think he's got Devontae Booker or Adrian Peterson as an option in our big 16-team league. And assuming that Josh Jacobs is out, and if it turns out that DeAndre Swift is out, that is going to be a serious concern for Scotty and what he should do in a big week one of the playoffs. Right now, it's hard to say. We haven't heard anything from DeAndre Swift yet. He should be better. But I do against Green Bay. Green Bay gives up so much to the running back. I think Adrian Peterson, if Swift is out, is a fringe running back too. He's a clear flex spot. We've seen Adrian Peterson get in the end zone this past week. It could happen again. But Devontae Booker against Indianapolis is a very tough matchup. Devontae did not look good this past week in a better matchup. And now Indianapolis, it's not looking too great. Technically, in my rankings right now, I would still have Booker higher, but only by a hair. And we know Scotty loves his old veterans, guys he can rely on instead of these backups coming in. One thing I should mention as well, we talked about on our waiver show that there's been some running back injuries. Antonio Gibson, who's probably got you into the playoffs now, is out for an extended period of time. So we're looking at J.D. McKissic and Peyton Barber coming forward, and whether or not these guys are going to be solid starts is a real question. They play San Francisco. It's not going to be a great matchup for the Washington football team, but J.D. McKissic, if you're in any kind of PPR league, I believe he's going to be the better start. Peyton Barber got 14 carries, I believe, this past week. He's not someone I'm going to have a ton of confidence in if indeed, and I'm assuming that Gibson is out for an extended period of time. But another guy that I did not talk about is Ty Johnson, because Frank Gore sustained a concussion this past week. And Ty Johnson came in and looked pretty good. Now, Jamal Adams was in there as well. I believe that's his name anyways. Josh Adams. Jamal Adams is the safety. Josh Adams came in and looked okay as well. Josh Adams I would not start, but Ty Johnson is a guy that if you're really desperate, if you are the Antonio Gibson owner or you were starting Frank Gore for some reason, I think Ty Johnson is okay, but I'm having less and less confidence that these backups can come in and show out and perform what our expectations are. We got Scotty, we got Kelly, we got Derek in the chat. Larry Kane, what's going on? It's been a minute, Larry. It's been a minute. You're not on our YouTube comments as much anymore. Hopefully, your league is going well. He was up in our comments all off season long. We're gonna be doing tons of content all off season. We're gonna get some highlight films, maybe. We're gonna get some in-depth rookie analysis going forward. So if Kelly could answer the phone, we could have some decent audio, but that's all right. Or I'm at my parents' place. We have a telephone now. That doesn't happen when you're living on your own. I hope everyone is enjoying December and getting ready for the holidays. Larry Kane's in first place. I love that. Probably thanks to us, because we were touting some of these rookies that are breaking out all over the place, like Antonio Gibson, like DeAndre Swift, as long as he can stay healthy. Jonathan Taylor is looking like an every week start going forward. His schedule is great, except for week 16 in the playoffs. Hopefully, if you have Jonathan Taylor and you made it into the playoffs, you can roll with him every single week going forward. That's what I'm looking forward to doing. That's how I'm going to take the championship away from Scotty, who got a big win in week 13 to steal that division title away from me. But that's all right. Scotty's had a really good season in fantasy. It turns out, guys, that in every league I am in so far, I am in the playoffs. I play in 6 leagues where I am the owner. I do co-manage a team with my co-host, but I'm in the playoffs, so this should be a fun playoff start. We got Larry Kane asking if I would start Tua or Jalen Hurts next week. That is a tough one. If I don't really want to start either of those, to be honest with you, Larry. But technically, because we've seen Tua play in the NFL and play well and get wins, they do play Kansas City. It's not going to be great, but the game script could lead him to throwing the ball a little bit more, which could help Devontae Parker. But we know it's been a better fantasy game for Devontae when Fitzmagic is in at quarterback. So I've got Tua right now as a top 20 quarterback, but Jalen Hurts against New Orleans, it's a tough matchup. It's a tough first game for any rookie to play in. He's a top 30 quarterback. So some guys that I would start ahead of Jalen Hurts, I would even look at Andy Dalton at Cincinnati. I'd look at Cam Newton against the Rams if he's available. Teddy Bridgewater versus Denver, I would start. Mitch Trubisky is probably available. He plays Houston. I know it's kind of gross with Mitch and the Chicago Bears, but Houston does set up to be a good matchup. I would probably go with Trubisky over Jalen Hurts with this one. I'm excited to see Jalen Hurts play, but the New Orleans defense is going to be a tough one. Matt Stafford, I do also believe, is a good start against Green Bay. We're still not sure if those guys are back for the Lions, like DeAndre Swift or Kenny Golladay. But either way, Green Bay scores a ton in football, and that will make Matt Stafford pass the ball a lot. That leaves Marvin Jones Jr. as a good play. That means Amendola could be a good play, and T.J. Hawkinson is still a great play for the Detroit Lions. If his weapons are back, that should be a shootout. That's a great target for DFS. So Larry Kane, I would not roll with Hurts week 1, but they have no bye weeks. That's a tough one. So you're in first place, but no bye weeks. So Derek's also in first place. Hopefully you get a bye this week. I'm in a league, and I think I just sneaked in a bye in our league of record this past week. So biggest complainer, what's going on, man? Pollard or Luke Wilson tonight? Oh man, Luke Wilson. So if it's a PPR, half PPR, I don't know if it really matters. Shoot, I might roll with Pollard to hope that there's a big play and Zeke gets pulled out near the red zone and Pollard breaks one off. Neither of them are going to be good. If that's like a DFS play, it depends how many points you're down. I'm not gonna rely on Luke Wilson tonight, but that's a tough one, my dude. That's a tough one. Hopefully you don't need too much from Tony Pollard. That's right. Griffin, what's going on? First round, my playoffs league smashed the game, won by 20. He faces the guy who's been talking mad crap. Hopefully he can pull it out. Absolutely. I hope we can all pull it out. This is going to be a full week of me live streaming right here, getting you ready for your playoffs. I'm in quarantine. I got nothing better to do than to help you guys analyze your teams, analyze your start sits. Sometimes, like Scotty said, we had a good playoff talk a couple of weeks ago. Feels like a couple weeks ago, this past week, on what to do, whether you are starting your studs or you're rolling with a guy you're picking off waivers like Alan Lazard, Corey Davis, these kind of guys, waiver wire ads, Ty Johnson, Devontae Booker. Are you going to rely on those guys in week 1 of your playoffs to win your matchups, or do you stick with your studs that are underperforming, like a Miles Sanders? You're probably going to roll with Zeke Elliott no matter what. But, Zeke Elliott, if he underperforms once again in a pretty smashed spot tonight, like, what do you do with Zeke? Or they play Baltimore. That's not a great matchup. So, I forget what this game's all about. Should be good. I'm excited for J.K. Dobbins tonight. He's going to be in a really good spot. I think I did one lineup for a showdown slate. Mac Tout is in the chat. It's been a while. Mac has been very busy with school. I'll just sip my wine and let him reply to all the comments in the chat right now. Ooh, how do you get in a dynasty league? Derek is asking. That's a great question, Derek. You need to find, I would say, 10 friends to start is a really good kind of get into the dynasty world. Once it gets to 12 or 14 people in Dynasty World, nobody's team is really good. You're going to have to grind, and the teams that are good are mostly lucky, and you're grabbing guys late that break out. So find 9 more friends, and you could do it on Twitter. You could do it through Sleeper. You could do it through Instagram. But I would try to find at least half of those people that you know or are friends of friends, because in Dynasty League, you want to last a long time. And if you just find it with random people, you're not going to get that interested. You want to have rivalries. You want to figure out, you want to learn together with all these friends. So you got to get guys that are invested in fantasy football, but that are your friends or family. You want to do a draft. If you can do an auction draft, Derek, that is the best case scenario, because in the snake draft, you just end up getting lucky. If you get the 101 and you draft Christian McCaffrey, if you're in a super flex league, you can decide the format later, and you draft Pat Mahomes or Kyler Murray, it's very much an advantage over the rest. Whereas if it's an auction league, you're going to have to pay up for those studs. So I know Yahoo does it in auction. I think Sleeper is going to start it next year. So if you could get into a Sleeper league next year with an auction draft, that is going to be great. You want to have a 25 team minimum. And then each year you can keep 20 guys. So 5 guys from your team are going to get cut. You could also have a taxi squad. There's other rules if you want to expand. You could do a 30-man roster and then cut 5 to make 25 guys a roster. But so those 5 people is 5 guys you drop. So you're doing a rookie draft every year with rookies only. So it's going to be a linear draft for your rookie draft. So the person that came in last place gets first every single round, just like the NFL draft. And yeah, so Max talking to you about Dynasty. You can find it on Twitter, etc. But you can get into our DMs, Derek. I know you probably are already, but Dynasty League is a lot of fun. You can switch things around. You could probably get rid of like defenses if you want in Dynasty Leagues. It doesn't really matter. You want to have you want to really have the best young players you can. You don't need to waste roster spots on defenses. I'm in one where we don't have a defense or a kicker, so that's a lot of fun as well. You want to kind of plan 2 or 3 years in advance. You don't want to get all young players and just be only young players. You still need some studs. You still need some old studs like Julio Jones and Adam Thielen and Keenan Allen. Those guys got all left for dead last year, and they've been great this year. You still want to win the league. But yeah, so hopefully that helps you with kind of that. You can go on for days. Dynasty is a ton of fun because you can always be rebuilding, trading for younger pieces, that kind of stuff. It's a great time. Draft picks aren't really worth as much because once you get into the 5th round of a rookie draft, you're really going shots in the dark. So, gaming, JML. What are my thoughts on Miles Sanders going forward? Sorry it took a while to get to your question. I was getting on this Dynasty trend. I love Dynasty. And we'll talk Dynasty through the offseason as well. Miles Sanders is a really tough one to really nail down because I love his talent, but he was in a smash spot against Green Bay this past week and did nothing with it. Now with Jalen Hurts, there's another question mark at quarterback. Their schedule is good, though. This week they have New Orleans. You don't want to start New Orleans. Arizona, Dallas. It's a tough schedule for Miles Sanders. I think you almost have to sit him down. Now, he did give me a start set for these other guys. So you have Cam Akers, which had a great game this past week. Gurley, Edmonds, and Fournette. Oh, man. Start one out of those guys? Oh, man. So this week, I'm going to look at my rankings here. It's going to be between Miles Sanders and Cam Akers, and they're only a couple spots apart. Technically, I still have Miles Sanders ahead. It's not by a lot. Cam Akers has to play New England this week. It's not a great matchup against Cam Akers either. Man, I don't want to play Miles Sanders, but I think you have to. Gurley's coming off an injury. He's got a banged up knee. He's got that arthritic knee. Gurley's been trash unless he got in the end zone. So Edmonds is a good guy to stash on your team, but he's not going to hold a ton of value unless Kenyon Drake goes down. And then he's got Fournette. And Fournette, it's kind of a hot hand between him and Ronald Jones this past week. Or every week, I mean. They were on bye this week. So I would still start Miles Sanders. Maybe the change of quarterback reinvigorates. I can't speak. The Philadelphia Eagles. And Miles Sanders shows why he is a good running back. He's a top-end dynasty running back still. Not top 12 anymore probably, but he's pretty close to that. I know he's a bum, Larry. I know Miles Sanders is a bum. I really hope he turns it around. Miles Sanders is probably going to be a trade target for me this offseason because I believe in the hype. He's only 23 years old. Penn State guys, they bust out some really good talent. I think Miles Sanders is a very talented back, but he really hasn't shown it much this year. He started off the year hot. 17 fantasy points, 12, 8, 22 against Pittsburgh, 10 against Baltimore. But he hasn't done much since he's been hurt. And it's tough to watch. So I would technically still start Miles Sanders, but it's a rough one, my dude. It's a rough one. Draft pick. It's a linear draft, Griffin, for a dynasty league every year. It's a linear draft for your rookie draft. Don't trust the Eagles in general. That's a pretty good philosophy. Yeah. McKenzie is hands off for Miles Sanders. I don't blame him. Justin Herbert or Lamar Jackson for the playoffs. That's also a great question because Herbert's been great, but the New England Patriots absolutely shut him down. So you got that doubt in your mind, that doubt of Justin Herbert in your mind. Now, but he's got Atlanta, Las Vegas, Denver going forward. That is an amazing schedule. So if you're in the playoffs, despite this past week, you hate to hear someone that had Herbert, Miles Sanders, Gibson. Maybe they had Frank Gore starting for the team, and it's a bunch of zeros or ones or twos for that team. That's a great team on paper, but it's not looking good for your team. Or if you listen to us and you started Kyle Rudolph with another zero. Lamar Jackson also has a great schedule. We've been talking about him for a while in the playoffs. Tonight, I'm interested to see what happens against Dallas. It will matter to me. If he puts up that kind of patented 80-yard run on the ground, or 80 yards on the ground for Lamar this week and 2 or 3 touchdowns, I'd probably just roll with Lamar in the playoffs because he's got Cleveland, Jacksonville, and New York Giants coming forward. The New York Giants have been better than normal, but the teams are not going to take them loosely anymore. They're going to take them very seriously. That's why I kind of like Kyler Murray this week. He plays the Giants. They're going to come for blood. We know it's going to be a tough game. They know it's going to be a tough game. Kyler Murray's running a little bit more. His shoulder looks better. So I think it's going to be a really good game for the Cardinals against the Giants. So generally, rolling forward, depending on what Lamar does tonight, I would roll Lamar. But we've seen the upside for Herbert be higher this year, except for the one game, literally the last game against New England. So, man, if you would have asked me this week before, I'd probably go Justin Herbert. But we'll see tonight. I think it does matter tonight. If Lamar only puts a very mediocre game together, then go with Herbert and roll with the high ceiling, because I think they will bounce back. Patreon. We tried to get into Patreon, but we prefer giving advice for free. We appreciate the love from you guys, though. We've been grinding all year. Why is Easy not a blue name? He's here on every stream. Let's get Easy on the producer. Easy. Scott, you want to relinquish your producer status and give it to Easy? You can get up here on the chat. Eric's been on one of our podcasts before. him, myself, and Scotty were on a podcast together. We had a lot of fun. It was a good time. Eric's been one of the OGs. He's the guy right from the get-go. He always supports us, and we appreciate that, Eric. You're probably at home spending time with family, but you're on your phone talking to us, talking fantasy. So Rojo has a great playoff schedule. So does Tom Brady. If you're streaming quarterbacks, look to see if Drew Brees is available on your waiver wire. If you have a room for him, he could be back next week. Or he was questionable for this week. Doesn't look like he's going to play, but he should be good. Also, I would also consider picking up Saints if Drew Brees is back. I know it's going to be risky and you got to play for this week, but if you have players that are just stashes or if you have extra spots, look at guys like Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, I'm not sure if Latavius Murray will be as viable in the playoffs if Drew Brees is back, but Alvin Kamara sure will be. But Alvin Kamara is not on anyone's waiver wire. So, is that a snap hat? I wish it was. We should definitely get a snapback. It's not even a snapback. I've got lots of snapbacks. They're my favorite kind of hat. This is a Novus hat. David Wilson, 8585. Maybe this offseason we're going to invest in some stuff. We're making it, 2021 hats added to the list. Absolutely. I'm in on some hats for the Snap guys. We'll get some rebranding. We got a lot of fun stuff this summer coming your way. Our content won't come out as often, but the content will be premium going forward. A lot of in-depth analysis, looking into the rookies. We are all about the rookies in the offseason. So we'll look into Trevor Lawrence. We'll look into Justin Fields. We'll look into Travis Etienne. We'll look into the Canadian Chuba Hubbard, Jamar Chase. We're going to look into a lot of the guys coming forward. Devonta Smith from the Alabama wide receiver might be one of the best wide receiving prospects of the draft. Him and Jamar Chase are kind of neck and neck. Who's going to be taken first off the board? Now, this next year seems very top heavy, where the 2020 class was deep. I mean, we saw Brandon Ayuk have a great game last game. He wasn't touted as a Henry Ruggs or even a Jalen Reagor. So even though he was taken in the first round or second round, I believe. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Jalen Waddle got hurt, but he should be a really good wide receiver as well. Like I mentioned, Travis Etienne. The list goes on of the high-end rookies for next year. So we're going to look into all of those guys. Make sure to stay tuned. All you guys, you're already fans of the show. I don't need to ask you to like the video because you already do. But there's 12 people watching and there's 10 likes. So get up on that like, and we will continue to get this going. I'm going to stay on for another half hour. That 29 minutes, Scotty and Mac, that is flying by. And I'm talking to myself. But that was a quick 29 minutes, and we'll be ready to rock for another 29. We got a good game tonight. Does anyone in the chat or watching need anything to happen tonight? Do you have J.K. Dobbins? Are you planning on playing him all playoffs long? Do you need Lamar Jackson? We actually need a good performance from Lamar tonight to move on in the Scott Fishbowl tournament, which is one of the biggest tournaments in all of fantasy football. It's all for charity. We're with a bunch of experts and a bunch of fans. If you haven't heard of that, check out the Scott Fishbowl. It's a great cause. KFK is asking what I'm drinking. I'm drinking a Syrah, a Bedrock Syrah. I am lucky enough to be at my parents', and my family has a nice wine collection, so I'm drinking some nice wine while I'm home for the holidays. Up in Northern Ontario, where I am now, there's a rule that you have to quarantine for 2 weeks even in the same province. Like, it's similar, like for the Americans out there, it's the same state essentially, but it's going into a remote area, and they want you to quarantine because there was recently an outbreak. And I'm coming from a highly dense area in Ontario, so that's what's going on with me. I'm up here quarantining by myself, enjoying some fantasy football with the guys. So he's going to get Nick Chubb and Chuba Hubbard on the same team. Chubb and Chubb. I like that. Hubbard's a Canadian. He was touted as being one of the top 2-3 running backs. He has since fallen off the map. I still like Hubbard. He's not going to be a high-end guy, but he could be more of like a Gibson type this year, where he wasn't a first-round rookie pick, but he was a second-round one, and that he could break off and have a good season. So that's what's going on. Monkey Knife Fight. We should contact Monkey Knife Fight and get them to sponsor the show. We need to solicit some more sponsors, because we're talking about Manscaped. If you want 20% off plus free shipping, make sure to use SNAP20 promo code. They're sending us some cologne coming up, so I can't wait to try some cologne. KFK is actually looking at getting into the fantasy game, I think. We'll talk in the offseason, and we'll get you set up to make sure that you are locked and loaded for this year. And the podcast game, you really got to love it, because when you first get into the podcast game, I talked to Scotty a lot about this. It's like yelling into a void, because there's so many content creators out there trying to make it as a fantasy football podcast. It's tough to be, you could have great information. You could be ultra prepared. You could be right about everything, and you pretty much get no praise for the first little while anyways. YouTube is where it's at. If you can get on YouTube, we get to interact better with all of you. We can find you easier. We can get your questions answered faster. And that's kind of where I would recommend going. So if you could find out how to edit videos real quick, that's what I would recommend doing if you can. So, but KFK Fantasy, I know you'll be in our circle for a while, so appreciate you coming by all the time. If you need some actual advice one-on-one, you know where to get us. I am quarantining the right way, guys. I am quarantining the right way. I'm excited for a J.K. Dobbins show tonight. I could do a live lineup on Draftkings for you guys if you want to see what my process is tonight. I'm not the best at showdown slates, but I could definitely do that. I'll do a $3 entry live on the channel. So my captain that you get 1.5 points for every fantasy point they go with. Lamar Jackson, I feel like, is going to be fairly highly owned. So if I knew, and I know he's going to be like 70, 90% owned in this slate. So if I get off of him in the, oh man, or do I just go for him for the captain spot and say screw it and go with Lamar Jackson? You know what? There we go. Before I keep going, I got Mantal in the chat. What's going on, Mantal? Who is worth more right now, Michael Thomas or Mike Evans? Great question. I much prefer Michael Thomas. In season long and dynasty, I much prefer Michael Thomas. It wasn't so long ago that he was the number one wide receiver in football. There's definitely competition in that Tampa Bay offense. I know I don't expect Antonio Brown to be there long term, but Chris Godwin is still going to be the number one in that offense. I'm not expecting. Oh man, the big question is about Drew Brees and whether or not he's going to be back long term. He might not be back next year for the Saints. So there is definitely question. That's a good question. It's not a super obvious open shut question that it's going to be Michael Thomas, but I do prefer him as a wide receiver. I think he's going to be just fine long term, even with Taysom Hill. He seems to target him quite a bit. And I still prefer Michael Thomas, but Mike Evans still holds value in fantasy. He always does. So Yeah, interesting question. We could look into that a little bit more going forward, but I do prefer Michael Thomas. Matt can voice in to see who he prefers, but I feel like his answer is going to be the same. We do stream every Sunday until championship week, until week 16. We're probably going to still do some shows for the Super Bowl, but it's not going to be as often because fantasy football is over for most of us in week 16. We'll do a week 17 podcast, but we won't be doing too many lives after week 16, but we still got lots of time. I'm going to be doing streams every day this quarantine. I've got a pretty good setup here, and this is it. We got 9 people watching. Thanks for coming by, everyone. Thanks for liking the video. Thanks for coming in. MT, haven't heard much. Evans news kind of vanished. Yeah, Mike Evans he's a good wide receiver. His ceiling is always big because, and this week against Minnesota, I think it's a great matchup for all Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Should be good. Could be a good Ronald Jones game. Could be a decent Fournette game. Could be a decent Antonio Brown game. But because Minnesota just will give up so much to everyone in that offense. Minnesota just finds a way to give up fantasy points all over the place, as Scotty and myself know very well, as my Diggs jersey behind the Minnesota Miracle happened. Their defense is not the same as it used to be, but they seem to have the number of the New Orleans Saints often in the playoffs. So, oh yeah, Mac is out here. Good. Enjoy the rest of your night, Mac. I know he's working hard. He's been very busy with school and everything, but I don't mind holding down the fort here. The Vikes Cardinals for the last overall spot. Yeah, it's going to be tight. The Vikings are going to have a hard time with the Buccaneers this weekend. I do think the Cardinals can pull off a win against the Giants, but the Giants have been very good lately. They've been winning 2 consecutive matchups that no one projected them to win. I know the Cardinals aren't going to take them light, but it could just be that the Giants are the real deal. I'm not sure if Daniel Jones is going to be back or not. I don't think he will be, but I don't think it matters. Wayne Gallman is going to be pretty good. He always is, especially when he gets all that work. It could be a decent game for Sterling Shepard. Darius Slayton has not been good, but he's that deep threat, and he needs Daniel Jones to really pull that off. But really, the Cardinals' defense hasn't been great either, so it could be a little bit of a bonanza game there. If you're playing Draftkings and you're into fantasy football, make sure to maybe check out a showdown slate, or maybe triple stack that team. Go Kyler Hopkins, maybe Christian Kirk, and run it back with a Wayne Gallman or a Sterling Shepard. That's interesting slate there. This how's the traffic on Twitter there, Scotty? Is it pretty slow night tonight? It's a pretty slow night for fantasy Twitter, even with the big game tonight. Everyone's pretty much in the playoffs. No one's relying on Ravens or Cowboys, I guess. So all right, guys, I'm going to stick on for another 5 minutes if we're still slow in the chat, and we will get it going. Mark Coxwell is asking, trust the Eagles with Goddard next week or try with Logan Thomas? That's a great question. I don't want to trust Dallas Goedert with Jalen Hurts in a tough matchup against New Orleans. I think I would rather go with Logan Thomas versus San Francisco. I know they're a good defense, but Logan Thomas is super involved in that offense. The Washington football team is flying high right now after that win against the Steelers. And if they shut down Terry McLaurin again, like the Steelers did, I mean, Logan Thomas is that guy, the go-to guy for Alex Smith. I wish I had spots of Logan Thomas where I don't. He's been a favorite waiver wire ad all season long. I just couldn't snag him anywhere. And yeah, I would go Logan Thomas, but it's very close. So that's a very good question. Mark, it's almost flip the coin. If Zach Ertz is still healthy and is going to take a couple more targets away from Dallas Goedert, for sure. It's possible that there's a couple things you could think about with a rookie quarterback, and we don't really know exactly. We saw it in limited time that he pushed the ball downfield to Jalen Reagor, but normally a rookie quarterback's best friend is short, intermediate routes, and that could set up well for Dallas Goedert. There's a narrative to be told that Goddard's going to be a safety blanket for him. It could be even closer to the line of scrimmage. It could be Miles Sanders. So it could be a lot of oh no. It could be a dump-offs to Miles Sanders. It could be intermediate routes to Dallas Goedert. Producer Scott has just told me that Des Bryant just tested positive for COVID. Hopefully there is no close contact on the Baltimore Ravens. That seems highly unlikely. I think they're going to try to make this game happen. I don't know how they would test everyone, or there's going to be contact tracing. That's going to be a wild scene, and see if this game actually happens. It needs to happen. It's happening in what, half an hour? Is it a 8:20 game or 8 o'clock game? I'm not even sure. 8:15 game, so it's happening in half an hour. So we will keep you tuned in to see what happens there. This might not even happen. That's going to be wild. Shoot, that's going to be a crazy time. Hopefully that's not a Lamar Jackson sitting down on the bench or not available to play. He just had COVID. So, playoff start for you, week 15 gaming. Interesting. Thanks, KFK, for coming by. What's going on? Gaming do I trust TJ Hawkinson even with a potentially Kenny Golladay return? Absolutely, I do. The tight end market is a mess as it is. So if you have TJ Hawkinson, you kind of have to start him. You probably don't have a better option available unless you have a Travis Kelce or Darren Waller. So TJ Hawkinson is in a great spot. I hope Kenny Golladay returns. We don't know if he is. We thought he'd return 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he has not come back from that hip injury. So hopefully he's back. But if he's back, I am starting Kenny Golladay unless you have exceptional options. But otherwise, you still got to start TJ Hawkinson. Great question, Gaming JML. Reverse Flash 1. What do I think of Peyton Barber? I think Peyton Barber is an interesting spot to have 10 to 15 carries next week. That's what he showed this week in a spot start. I think J.D. McKissick's going to be the one that's going to be more involved. I have Barber. Let me check my rankings there. Reverse. Barber, right now I don't have Barber too high. They play San Francisco this week, like I mentioned about Logan Thomas. I don't have him too high, man. I don't have him too high, even expecting, knowing that Antonio Gibson is not going to play. So I'm not going to spend much fab or priority on your waiver wire on Peyton Barber. But if you want to add him and stash him this week in the first round of your playoffs, that's not a bad choice. J.D. McKissick has been banged up before. He's not super valuable, but if it turns out this week that McKissick has 20 carries, then you got a guy for the rest of the playoffs potentially. So thanks for coming by. Reverse, I'll get your other question. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm doing start sit stuff, questions, Q&As, ask me anything all week long. So thanks. I haven't seen your name yet, but him or Akers. So I would go with Akers. I would go Cam Akers over Peyton Barber. So great question. We saw Cam Akers get over a 60% share of the backfield this past week. He had the best fantasy game by a lot. I know Darrell Henderson did get that runoff in the end zone, but he did go down with an injury. I much prefer the upside of Cam Akers over Peyton Barber. So It could backfire on you. I think Cam Akers is the play. He gives you a ton of upside. He's a rookie. He's kind of the last rookie running back to break out. So thanks for Reverse Flash 1. Make sure to subscribe and like the video if you're here for the first time. But that's it for me, guys. Thanks for coming by. We had a lot of fun for that 45 minutes. We got the stream out, and you got to hang out with me on my quarantine, my day 1 of quarantine. Good luck with all of your matchups tonight and in the week 1 of your playoffs. I will be back tomorrow night for another live stream. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and we will see you